Hi, and welcome to Roll the Dice. Today's topic is going to be Crunchy versus Cinematic Systems. Again, we have a couple of guests. We have Amy and we have Vinny. Say hi, Amy and Vinny.
Hi, Amy.
There we go. I am Dave, your host. This is JK, and this is Keith. So, Crunchy versus Cinematic, where do we want to start?
Let's start with the definition.
All right. Definition of Crunchy.
What is a crunchy system? I would say a crunchy system is a system that has a lot of rules that govern what the characters can and cannot do.
As well as the environmental effects on the characters and how much you have to do behind the scenes.
Right.
In
general, crunchy, more rules, cinematic, less rules. Just as a very simple rubric.
Sure. And on the very far side of that, we have systems like what?
What side are we on?
To the opposite side of the spectrum. So cinematic. The most cinematic ones we can think of. I think of Dresden Files.
Dresden Files, Fate, the
Fate system.
Yeah.
Can you think of it?
Apocalypse?
Powered by the Apocalypse, also, very cinematic.
Turn them up a little bit. Yep, so Powered by the Apocalypse. What else do we have on the cinematic side?
Up.
Well, I also think of not just stats driven, but also the role the player has in telling the story, right?
Oh, sure.
Cooperative storytelling.
Right.
I think, and maybe that goes right along with the number of rules involved. The more rules you have, the less player involvement in just making decisions.
Right. Speak up a little bit.
Yeah, there's an argument that the more rules you have, the more power is given to the players.
Right. Yes. And I think that's an important thing. I've found over the last 40 years, I like giving the players more power to do what they want to do. One, it makes the story more interesting. It's not just one-sided storytelling, right? It's a combination. Everybody gets their shot. Everybody gets to have their feedback in to make the story grow more richer, more full.
Right, and usually cinematic games will give the player some kind of mechanic for control over the story, whether that be like some kind of action point system or a fate point that allows you to, from as simple as something as allowing you to re-roll,
sure.
to roll,
sure,
to actually making changes in the story.
Right. And, the Cypher system adds something for the cinematic side of it. They have a thing called Story Arc. Cypher system by Monte Cook Games. And they, the characters, the players get to choose a story arc for their character that is completely cinematic, completely story-driven on things. So things like that augment a system that could be crunchy, but, evens out and leans more heavily to the cinematic. So I'd say something like Cypher System is kind of in the middle of the road.
I would put Cypher System probably a little more on the cinematic side than on the crunchy side, personally.
Right. The calculations you have to do are fairly minimal, and then the rest is...
So the other opposite side of the spectrum, what's crunchy?
What's crunchy?
What kind of systems are crunchy?
Oh, Traveler, Shadowrun sometimes,
I even think
depending on the version.
I think Dungeons and Dragons is pretty crunchy.
Oh, D&D is very crunchy.
D&D is quite crunchy.
What do you think, Vinny and Amy? What do you think of as a crunchy system?
Ladies first.
Yep. Go ahead, Amy. Amy is a relatively new player to the role-playing industry here, so...
Hobby.
Yeah.
I think that D&D is pretty crunchy.
A lot of adding, a lot of variables. Yeah. How about you, Vinny? What do you think?
Yeah, it is.
Hero system looks like a college textbook when you open it up.
It reads a lot like a college textbook.
Yeah, that and the standard unisystem. That has rules where you roll for armor and weapons. So,
oh jeez, yeah.
How much damage you do, how much damage did the armor soak?
Right.
A little too gritty. Too
Well, and then we've got Phoenix Command, which to my mind is the opposite end of the spectrum, deep into the crunchy side.
That holds down the crunch end.
Yeah.
For sure. Oh boy, that was a system that was, they literally, one of the supplements was a book of damage tables.
Yep, that's all it was.
Literally just a book of charts. You would roll a D1000 on where each bullet hit and how far it penetrated, and just that level of simulation.
I shudder
Yeah.
to think how long a combat scene would take with it.
Days.
Too long.
We tried it
Way
once,
too-
maybe twice.
Yeah,
and
no, it was just unplayable.
one combat scene was 6 hours, something like that. And that was for a 2-minute fight? Something like that? I mean,
I think that system would have been fine had it been run by a computer.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
I think it would have been great if it's run by a computer.
And I think that's really where like the most crunchy
Yeah,
stuff really should reside,
Right.
is in a computer.
in a computer. Aftermath, kind of the same way. That was back in the early 80s, I think, Aftermath and Phoenix
it's-
Command.
painful to read those books.
So the farther back we go, more crunchy or more cinematic. I think crunchy, D&D was the second role-playing game ever made. Empire of the Petal Throne was the first. So we've got D&D pretty early on, based off a tabletop combat game that they made at Berkeley. So immediately that says to me it's going to be crunchy.
Well, you look at who designed the first role-playing games and where they came from. It was wargamers.
It was wargamers.
Right? It was people who were trying to simulate battle.
Right.
And so, kind of from that background, what they developed was very simulationist,
Right.
or trying to be.
And now we've gone from D&D or actually from chainmail to D&D to advanced D&D to D&D 3.0 and 3.5 to D&D 4, now D&D 5, and they're working on D&D 6 already. So many iterations. They're starting to lean to more cinematic and still maintain a very crunchy system.
Yeah.
Combat in that system takes too long, I think. That's why it's not my favorite game. But it is the most popular in the world.
It is, and I think 5th edition is it the best version of D&D that I've ever played?
Yeah,
Maybe?
Maybe. I'm still thinking 3.5 is the winner on that, but
I came up in AD&D. I liked it. I still have a soft spot for AD&D.
right. Well, how about you, Vinny? When you're running as a pro GM, what system do you prefer to use? And is it crunchy or is it cinematic?
I mostly run 5 when I'm doing it professionally, just because it seems to be what people are interested in right now.
Right.
Yeah, that's where the interest is. Crunchy-wise, I think 3.5 was pretty crunchy because you can get some really in-depth character creation between all the feats and kits and all the books that it put out. It was just really intense, and you can get some really interesting things. But the more complex the creation is, I think the crunchier it is as well.
Right.
Especially after you get past like 10th level, it starts getting really
Oh, yeah.
intense.
I think maybe there's a good reason why no one wants to play that. They went to play version 5 now.
Actually, there's a whole lot of people that want to play that. It's called Pathfinder now.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pathfinder. Very popular game.
Uh,
Piazza put out a good
know-
thing when they made Pathfinder.
Vinny, you said something about the more rules that there are, the more crunchy you're going to run into, or the more
Mhm.
the more
things that you
complex
go through.
character creation was.
Yeah. But I mean, on a flip side to that, I think it's also based off of how the GM is going to utilize those tools and run it. I went through creating a character for Calamar, and
A
there
D&D
are
based system.
tables upon tables upon tables upon tables that you roll for. What was your grandmother known for? And it gets very, very, very deep into it. But it doesn't necessarily have to the actual mechanics and moving forward, none of that really has to matter past the character creation point.
Right.
It just gives you a deeper character, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the game itself is going to be crunchy. Cypher system has a lot of rules. Technically, the rulebook is huge, but it's also very cinematic.
And I'd have to disagree with you on that. Out of the giant book, there's only 16 pages of rules, right? The rest of the content
right. Yeah.
is about adding flavor to the character, giving them some abilities, but it's not crunchy at all. You just go through and pick out what you want. That's, you find that in any cinematic game, you're going to have to go and pick out what you are, who you are. So really, to me, it comes down to the core rules of the system. Traveler was a lot of core rules about things. Shadowrun, a lot of core rules, decent amount of content as well. But their content really came in all their expansions that they did. The book was usually crunchy.
Oh, give them credit. They added a whole lot of rules with every expansion as well.
Good point. Yes.
Yeah.
Good point. So let's talk about preferred style. Crunchy Systems gives you and the players very definitive rules to play by. Granted, you have to remember all of those things, but you know where you stand, right? In that. In cinematic ones, it's more kind of willy-nilly, right? You're playing a lot more make-believe with cinematic systems. So what do you think? Let's start it off with Vinny. What do you think about? I just lost my track of where I was going.
You did.
What do you think about? What's your favorite system? And is it crunchy or is it more cinematic?
I would have to say that my favorite system is going to be Unisystem Cinematic.
Cinematic. Okay.
Because the system is simple enough that I can improvise the rules and the adjudication without having to resort too much to the following them.
Right.
And the trauma points that the cinematic system uses gives the players a lot of control and agency.
Perfect. JK, how about you?
Same way. I like the more cinematic sort. I for instance, D&D versus the Cypher system, I tend to like the Cypher system because of that collaborative storytelling. And
Right.
the ability to, shift the story a bit, without having to fall back on all the statistics.
Right. And my favorite part of this Cypher system, I think, is the story arc for the characters to be able to add abilities for them to earn experience on their own. Create their own separate mini adventures, really, on trying to solve questions or answer problems. Does it make it more crunchy? Not really. You get a few extra experience points here or there. So, more cinematic to me. How about you, Keith? What's your favorite, and is it crunchy or cinematic?
So it depends if I'm running or playing.
Okay. If you're running.
If I'm running, actually, I don't really care. Or not running, sorry. If I'm playing, I don't really care.
Okay.
Because, any finite amount of rules that will only be a certain number that will pertain to my character.
Right.
I can learn those, no problem.
Sure.
Don't really have a big deal. I don't have to keep all the rules in my head.
Right.
If I'm running, I don't want to remember all that shit.
Right.
And
you don't need to, technically, if the GM has not followed the same path, right?
So if I'm running a game,
Yep.
if I'm GMing, I want to do Fate, super cinematic,
Right.
Really, really versatile.
Sure.
Or I want to do Savage Worlds, which I would say is a little crunchier than like the Cypher system.
Mm-hmm.
But it also is at its heart really stripped down and easy.
Yeah.
And it runs
very adaptive too.
It runs super fast.
Yeah.
That's another one. Boy, playing or running, if combat bogs down,
Yeah.
ugh.
And
bored.
Combat can bog down in a cinematic game as well.
Yes.
But it's more likely to break down in the crunchy systems. D&D combat takes a long time. Cypher system combat takes a long time, but the output is more cinematic, therefore I think more enjoyable or more rich for the players. And as far as rules, I hate trying to memorize a lot of rules, right? So I won't concentrate on the players' rules. Players can learn how to run their character and they can tell me what they can do. And that means I can concentrate on all the rest of the world building and all of that, the crunchier part of it. Right? How about you, Amy? Crunchy or cinematic, which do you like better?
Oh my goodness. I like to know what I have the ability to do from a world and a GM standpoint.
Okay.
So I love the cinematic. I really do. I love the cinematic. But if a game has rules, I'm going to follow those. And so if other people or the GM are a little bit looser with that, it really creates this weird dichotomy with me where I'm like, yay, more RP, and then wait a minute, that's not how that's supposed to work. So...
Well, now you've just described me, because I will throw Crunchy out the window to save the cinematic, right? I want an emotional content and emotional dialogue with players, and if I have to break down and calculate Crunchy, or look up Crunchy, it takes it out of it breaks the whole scene, really. So I sacrifice the rules for the benefit of the story and the players.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's just like an individual conflict that I have in particular, because I got so excited about, joining these campaigns, exploring these worlds. And I mean, I had read the Cypher System book before we started.
Right.
The first time. I was just like in it and on it. And then to actually experience it and to have more of a cinematic GM style that you have, it messes with my brain every single time. And I have to remind myself, this is not what this is for. These are guidelines.
Right. Well, I do that with D&D too, which, as we've discussed, is a fairly crunchy system. But we just had this situation the other day where somebody wanted to do something interesting with a spell. And we looked at the reading of the spell, and it didn't have anything like what he would like to do with it, but the name of this spell was spot on. And so I allowed that spell to do a little bit more than what the game designed, right? So the crunchy gives you a good solid foundation to work from, but you can always tweak crunchy. But the rules lawyers, which we've covered in a different episode, that's where conflict can happen at the gaming table. And I think conflict happens more often in crunchy systems than and I'm talking table conflict, not game conflict. Right? I think that happens more in crunchy systems than in cinematic.
Well, there's just more to argue about in a crunchy system.
Yeah, right.
You have more rules, so you have more interpretation of those rules.
I had misremembering the rules. Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, Vinny, you'll get a kick out of this. I was running a game about a month ago, with 3 DMs from Start Playing Games. And so we were all professional GMs. I was nervous as hell because I feel like I'm being audited while I'm running. And the game broke down into an argument about area of spell effect, where it starts, where it finishes, all that kind of stuff. And they were all arguing their points very solidly. And I was trying to mitigate this, and I didn't know the answer to it, so I wanted time to go research it and come back to the answer. They all did, and they realized that my ruling was correct, but it took us a lot of time to get there. And, I didn't have a whole lot of stakes in that game, right? I didn't really care about it because I was just going to do my own thing and keep the game moving. So Crunchy can really bog things down and create interesting arguments at the table.
Unless that's something you love.
Arguing?
Yeah. I mean, I give you Warhammer players.
Oh, geez.
You
Yeah.
know? You like to argue about rules, you can get together in a room with a bunch of other people that like to argue about rules, and you have a grand time.
Right. Well, the debate. It's always good. Anything else?
No, not for me. Any last points there, Vinny and Amy?
No.
No.
All right.
Amy, anything from you? Go ahead, Joe.
I'm just happy that I get to play.
What about you, the viewer?
Aren't we all?
What do you think in terms of Crunchy versus cinematic spells, stats driven versus non? Leave a comment and be sure to like also.
Yeah, like us and follow us, and all your comments, we'll look at them and we'll get back to you on that, and we'll have a discussion. So thanks for watching Roll the Dice and in all things gaming, and we'll see you next week.